Your family had a lot of fun together, but you also worked hard. It's tough for me to imagine what life was like on the farm. So just tell me a little about that.
Well, of course, we didn't have electricity, didn't have gas or running water for several years. So you had chores you had to do. Some chore might be bringing in water that you dug up from the well or pulled up from the well, and might be wood that you chopped down at where the wood pile was, and then you bring in chips to start the fires, and
Different kind of life.
gathering eggs, milking the cows, and feeding the hogs, and there was chores to be done.
On the farm, what was the main way you made money?
Well, peanuts was a cash crop, and sometimes cotton, a little bit of cotton, but Dad sold calves every year also from our cattle, and some pigs, and every spring we'd get several baby chicks. We'd raise those, and we'd sell some of those to A&P and maybe Piggly Wiggly, and we'd eat several of them. But we sold eggs to A&P every Saturday, and from those eggs, well, we each would get a quarter, and that quarter would take you to the movies, have a candy bar and a Coke and an ice cream.
Whoa, so you could get a lot with a quarter.
Yes,
That was pretty generous. I know times were tough, but your mom and must have believed that it was important for kids to have a good time too.
Yes, but Dad also, we believe that. So it wasn't all work.
Ah. Well, was there seasonality involved with the farm? Were there times where you didn't have as much work to do because of the cycle of crops?
Well, yes, there was, but where most people were laid back, nothing to do, Dad usually had something for us to do, fix fence or work on the barn or clean out the cow lot or something like that. And we had some fishing trips a few times, things like that, but we worked hard usually all year long.
Did your father have hired hands?
Well, sure. He had some hard hands. He had Will, Dale, Clay, and later on myself. And of course, the farmers went together for harvest, and they would harvest one person's peanuts, and then they would go to the next person's field and harvest their peanuts. So
Now, farming was a lot different back then. You didn't start off with tractors.
no, we didn't get tractors until about 1940. Before that, Dad had 8 horses and 4 teams, one for himself, one for Webb, one for Dale, and one for Clay. I wasn't big enough to have a farm with horses.
So a team was 2 horses.
Team was 2 horses, and those 4 teams probably couldn't do as much work as the beef farm all tractor that we bought in 1940.
So that was when you got your first tractor in 1940?
Right.
And it was a beef farm all?
Beef farm all, and we've also bought one. It was a used farm all F14 or F12, I believe.
About when did Will get his tractor?
About the same time, about 1940. And
Would have placed him at about, what, 18 or so?
that would have placed him about 18, right.
Tell me a little bit about when you went to the movies. What did you see?
Well, there was Roy Rogers, Gene Autry. It seemed like one of them was on every other week. And
A lot of westerns then.
only westerns is about all we went to when I was young. And they would have a newsreel, which would tell us how the war was going, World War II. And there would be comedy, and there would also be what they call a serial, where it was to be continued the next week. It would look like things were really getting bad, and they would stop and say to be continued.
So I think you were saying that it'd be something like a stagecoach ready to go over a cliff or something
Right.
like that. And
The bad guys was chasing the stagecoach, and they're about to go over the cliff.
now, much of the time growing up, you didn't have electricity. How old were you when you got electricity?
We got electricity in 1944. That was before the war was over, which kind of surprising. But I think they thought the farms could be more productive if they could have electricity and have for power tools and lights and so forth. And that was really an advancement for us because we got a radio that ran on electricity. And
Before you had electricity, you also had a radio.
well, our neighbors on the other road got electricity first, and when they did, they got rid of their battery-powered radio. So we went down to buy it. It was from Mr. Norris. Anyway, the battery had to be replaced every week. We'd take the battery into Western Auto and get a new battery, or a fully charged battery. And we had an antenna went from the top of our house to the top of the garage. And if that wasn't connected, it wouldn't work.
What kind of shows did you listen to on the radio?
Well, what we really liked to do when we get home from school was listen to Hop Harrigan and also Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy. And then there was a sitcom type thing too called Stella Dallas, and always kind of like a soap opera. But at night, and certain days during the week, Bob Hope would be on, or Jack Benny, or Red Skelton. And
that's interesting because I remember watching Red Skelton on TV when I was a young boy. But he started off in radio.
There's another show, Fibber, McGee, and Molly, that was real funny.
What was funny about that show?
Well, they always had to go to the closet, and they would make out like they just hated to open that door. But they finally decided they had to. And when they did, well, there'd be a big racket. Everything would fell out. And
so they made good use of sound effects.
Sound effects, right.
That was part of the comedy.
Yes,
It was, times were different back then. It was really tough. I can't imagine what it'd be like as far as not having electricity, not having running water in the house. How did you get water for cleaning dishes, for baths?
Well, we had a well, and you drew water,
Uh-huh.
and then you'd pour it in a bucket, and you'd bring that in. You'd probably bring in 3 or 4 buckets, maybe.
Sounds like a lot of work involved.
Yeah, there's a lot of work involved. We got a windmill and a tower with a tank on it, and I think maybe when I was probably about 12, 13 years old, and
Did this windmill provide electricity?
no, water.
Oh, just
It
water.
pumped water into the tank, and so we had water piped into the house. And
Still no hot water, though, at that point.
no.
Other than what? I guess you would have to heat it, or how would that work?
We got butane in 1940. Yes, we'd have to heat it. We got butane in 1945 or 6, and we got a hot water heater then, and we had a shower and so forth.
Before you had butane, how would you heat the water for baths?
Well, you'd heat it up on the wood stove, in a metal bucket, and so you put it in a tub, and you take a bath.
How many rooms in your house?
6.
It must have been a little crowded at times.
Oh, it was, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I remember Clay, Dale, and myself slept together for a while. Yeah. By 1946, we had a septic tank, running water with a shower, and electricity, and we no longer had to chop wood.